Welcome, chosen ones. Never judge a warrior by their glow. Some of the most radiant faces shield the most formidable survival stories. Let's be honest, looking younger than your age is a compliment until it transforms into a proving ground. Studies reveal that individuals who appear significantly younger than their actual age are often underestimated, overlooked for positions of influence, and even targeted because others presume they are inexperienced, naive, or easily manipulated. And if you're divinely touched, that glow isn't solely the result of skincare and smoothies. It's divine preservation, a form of spiritual alchemy, grace illuminated. But here's the crux of the matter. Because your exterior doesn't reflect the depth of your journey, some assume you haven't journeyed at all. Consequently, they attempt to treat you like a novice, unaware that they've just activated a seasoned spiritual strategist cloaked in youthfulness. They observe your seemingly untouched countenance and conclude, this one is easily outmaneuvered. They are oblivious to the fact that you have already navigated infernos they are still fueling for others. This message is tailored for those who've been misjudged, underestimated, and prematurely dismissed simply because your youthful aura suggests a 20-something while your spirit resonates with the wisdom of someone who has communed with the divine in the wilderness. What do you desire? And rest assured we'll infuse some levity into the conversation. Because if you've ever encountered a 50-year-old narcissist attempting to lecture you on life while you were quietly orchestrating their downfall, you deserve a moment of amusement. So prepare yourself. By the conclusion of this piece, they'll wish they had solicited your insight instead of scrutinizing your complexion for signs of aging. Let's begin. Number 1. They mistook youthful appearance for emotional immaturity. They presumed your emotional resilience was lacking due to your youthful visage. That was their initial miscalculation. They assessed your flawless complexion, luminous eyes, and composed demeanor, deciding, this individual must be naive, unseasoned, or easily influenced. They envisioned manipulating you with falsehoods, bewildering you with convoluted arguments, and manipulating you into questioning your own judgment. In their estimation, you were a blank canvas, ripe for molding, controlling, or suppressing. However, what they failed to comprehend was that your youthful appearance was not indicative of ignorance, but rather the byproduct of wisdom that had already worked its transformative magic. You appeared youthful not because of a life devoid of hardship, but because you had fought relentlessly for your inner peace and navigated your personal tempests with resilience. They couldn't perceive the internal skirmishes you had already survived, the betrayals you had forgiven without the solace of an apology, the spiritual battles you had endured in solitude. They were unaware of the countless nights you had to parent yourself, comfort yourself, and reconstruct your identity from fragmented pieces. They couldn't fathom that someone who exuded such freshness had already mourned and buried versions of themselves shattered by heartbreak, rejection, and isolation. They had no inkling that your quiet confidence stemmed from a profound self-awareness, a knowing that transcended the need for external validation. Therefore, when they approached you with manipulative tactics, you remained impervious. When they sought to test your boundaries, you surpassed their expectations effortlessly. You anticipated their maneuvers before they articulated them. You sensed their energy before they uttered a single word. While they believed they were engaged in a game of chess, you were already executing moves several steps ahead, not out of a desire to dominate, but because you had already lived through similar scenarios countless times in reality. They conflated softness with simplicity, but you allowed them to persist in their illusion because the most effective method of exposing a person's true character is to permit them to believe they are superior to you. And now that the truth has been unveiled, they struggle to reconcile the fact that the seemingly vulnerable target they identified was in fact someone anointed, protected, and endowed with wisdom, far exceeding their own contrived intelligence. Number 2, you embody ancient wisdom within a youthful form. People experienced a sense of bewilderment upon meeting you. You possessed a youthful radiance brimming with vitality, yet your presence exuded an undeniable sense of antiquity, a profound depth that was palpable. They struggled to articulate it, but they felt it nonetheless. They perceived you as merely another youthful face, someone lacking in experience, still grappling with the complexities of the world. However, the reality was that your soul had traversed realms that most individuals wouldn't survive even in their nightmares. You didn't emanate the energy of someone new to existence. Rather, you carried the weight of someone who had witnessed it all and returned with divine directives. That was the concept they couldn't grasp. How could someone so youthful in appearance articulate such profound authority? How could someone with such a gentle aura possess eyes that reflected generations of pain, triumph, and spiritual awakening? Your wisdom wasn't gleaned from textbooks or influenced by fleeting trends. You were forged in the crucible of divine encounters, supernatural revelations, and real-world conflicts that catalyzed your inner transformation. The outward image they beheld didn't align with the potent energy that flowed through you, and as a consequence of this disparity, they underestimated your capabilities. They condescended to you, believing they were imparting valuable insights when in reality they were merely regurgitating concepts you had long since transcended. They attempted to impart lessons you had already internalized in solitude, without fanfare, in environments where no one extended a helping hand. They perceived themselves as more intelligent, more advanced, more capable. Yet each time you spoke, something within them quieted, not due to the volume of your voice, but because your truth resonated with a dissonance they were unprepared to confront. You embody ancient wisdom not acquired through conventional means, but rather remembered, activated within you as you embraced your calling. You're not here to conform to predetermined timelines. You're here to disrupt them. Your actions are guided not solely by logic, but by revelation, which explains why people are either drawn to you or exposed by you. The radiance emanating from your face is divine preservation, while the force underpinning your words is sacred memory. They assumed you were a novice. They thought they could exploit you. However, upon encountering your energy, they realized they were in the presence of something far older, wiser, and more formidable than they could ever fathom. Number 3, they anticipated timidity but encountered a warrior in disguise. They expected you to exhibit timidity. They genuinely believed you would recoil, falter, or collapse under pressure. That's their usual modus operandi. Seek out those who appear gentle, serene, and unconcerned, and automatically equate those traits with weakness. You appeared composed, youthful, like someone easily intimidated. However, what they failed to perceive was that beneath that tranquil surface resided someone who had endured more battles than they could possibly envision. They presumed you would be a pushover, only to discover someone who had already learned to stand independently, to articulate their truth when necessary, and to gracefully disengage without creating a commotion. You weren't ostentatious, but you were undeniably potent. They mistook your silence for apprehension, unaware that it was a manifestation of discipline. They expected you to seek validation, but you remained unfazed when they withheld it. They attempted to provoke a reaction, but were met only with clarity and unwavering boundaries. It was then that they realized their misjudgment. You weren't someone to be trifled with. Your reactions differed from those of others. You remained unimpressed by their titles, their fabricated confidence, and their passive-aggressive maneuvers. They had formulated plans to manipulate you, and now they were perplexed as to why their strategies were failing. The reality was that they were engaging with a warrior disguised in civilian clothing. You didn't arrive adorned for battle. Instead, you were clad in grace, serenity, and quietude. However, that didn't imply a lack of preparedness. What they failed to recognize was that your training had been experiential, not superficial. You had cultivated the ability to discern energy, recognize patterns, and navigate situations with astute judgment. You didn't need to resort to shouting to command attention. You didn't need to engage in combat to achieve victory. Your strength wasn't derived from aggression, but from restraint. And now they are at a loss as to how to respond to you. Those who sought to control you now actively avoid you. Those who underestimated you are now questioning their own assumptions. The same individuals who initially perceived you as pliable are now realizing your resilience, your discernment, and your unwillingness to tolerate nonsense. You didn't raise your voice, but you raised the standard, and that's what unnerved them. They believed they were entering a playground only to encounter someone who had already survived a war. Number 4. Your radiance was misinterpreted as an invitation for exploitation. They beheld your glow and concluded that you were readily available for exploitation. That's how superficial their perception was. They assumed that because you exuded peace, warmth, and kindness, you were easily manipulated, easily guilted, and easily controlled. They believed that your light implied an inability to refuse. They mistook your compassion for vulnerability. They didn't understand that your energy was precious and that despite your radiance, you weren't obligated to bear the burden of everyone else's negativity. Individuals of that ilk often confuse generosity with consent. They perceive a kind gesture as permission to disrespect you. They witness your swiftness to forgive and assume you'll tolerate anything. However, what they failed to consider was that your light wasn't merely an external glow. It was a filter, an intrinsic system that revealed intentions. The moment they attempted to extract too much, your spirit alerted you. Your intuition heightened. Your inner voice spoke up. You may have afforded individuals a chance, but once they began treating your radiance as a resource to deplete rather than a gift to appreciate, every fiber of your being shifted. What they overlooked entirely was that your light wasn't freely given. It was earned. You didn't simply awaken with a radiant glow. You endured trials, healed wounds, and made the conscious choice not to succumb to bitterness. Your gentleness is a deliberate choice. Your inner peace is the culmination of battles fought. Your joy is an act of defiance against everything that sought to shatter you. Thus, when individuals approach you with the intention of latching on, leeching off, and leaving you depleted, you sever the connection with grace, with silence, or with distance, but it's severed nonetheless. They believed your light was a weakness, but it served as a warning, a signal that you are not to be manipulated, that divine beauty is accompanied by unwavering boundaries. And the reality is that most individuals are ill-equipped to navigate someone like you, someone who is kind but not naive, generous but not gullible, radiant but not universally accessible. Now they are confounded. Why are their efforts failing? Why did you withdraw? Why can't they access you anymore? It's because they didn't approach you with the intention of honoring your light, but rather of exploiting it. And now that the door is closed, they're stranded outside, attributing blame to your attitude, when in truth they merely encountered your discernment. Number 5, they forgot that God preserves His anointed. They lost sight of whom they were dealing with. They assumed they were merely observing someone blessed with good genetics or a meticulous skincare regimen. They failed to recognize that your glow wasn't derived from facials and vitamins. It was emanating from divine preservation. God has been enveloping you, preserving you, protecting you. That youthful appearance they incessantly comment on isn't solely physical. It's spiritual, a testament to your preservation, not because you were shielded from adversity, but because God ensured that adversity didn't leave its mark. People often associate trials with physical manifestations, wrinkles, bitterness, cynicism. However, in your case, the storm passed through and somehow you emerged softer, lighter, and more radiant. That's not typical. That's not natural. That is supernatural. You didn't merely escape the fire, you were concealed within it. God shielded your essence while life attempted to dismantle you. That's why when they gaze upon you, something feels amiss. You possess inner peace despite having endured war. You exude gentleness despite having survived betrayal. You remain composed despite having navigated chaos. They are only now comprehending the true meaning of being anointed. It signifies divine intervention, divine defense, divine delay. You don't conduct yourself as they anticipate because your entire journey has been under the guidance and protection of a power greater than yourself. And when they sought to tamper with you, presuming you were merely another face, another light to extinguish, another individual to manipulate, they unwittingly trespassed upon a spiritual boundary line. It is at this juncture that everything shifts. They are discovering that interfering with you is not a personal matter. It's a spiritual violation, because when God sets someone apart, they are not to be approached with disrespect. Favor envelops your life, safeguarding you even when you are unaware. Angels safeguard your steps when no one is observing. There have been instances when you were destined to be shattered, yet somehow you remained intact. They believed they were attacking you, but what they truly did was challenge God's appointment. And now they are grappling with unforeseen consequences, not because you retaliated, but because He did. Number 6. Your appearance led them to underestimate your history. They glanced at your countenance and believed they had deciphered you entirely too flawless, too composed, too unconcerned. Thus, they presumed you hadn't lived much, that you were unfamiliar with true pain, that you were inexperienced, untested, untouched by life's darker aspects. However, they couldn't have been more mistaken, because behind that youthful visage lies a wealth of experiences, lessons, heartbreaks, recoveries, and divine revelations that most individuals don't accumulate in a lifetime. You've weathered battles so intricate and discreet that even your closest confidants are oblivious to your survival. Yet here you stand radiant, as if untouched by the flames. They perceived you as naive, but they were unaware that you had already navigated manipulation so subtle it required years to fully comprehend. They were unaware of the countless instances you had smiled across tables at those who were betraying you behind your back. They were unaware of the numerous times you had to rebuild your confidence after being undermined by individuals you trusted. They assumed your gentle demeanor signified inexperience. What they failed to recognize was that your composure stemmed from having already weathered the storm. You didn't attain this state by chance. You earned every iota of wisdom, every ounce of peace, every fragment of clarity you now possess. You weren't simply born this way. You were crafted in the darkness, in the quietude, when no one applauded, when no one offered assistance, and when you had to rescue yourself. The smile they witness is a miracle. The glow is a result of choosing not to allow pain to defile you. Your softness is fortified with spiritual muscle. So now they are perplexed. They cannot comprehend how someone who appears so youthful can be so resilient, so wise, so grounded. But that's the outcome when individuals judge solely based on outward appearances. They are realizing that you are not merely someone who reads about warfare. You have lived it. You're not merely reciting platitudes about healing. You have undergone the arduous process of navigating it. You are not a novice. You have been trained in silence, equipped through suffering, and preserved by God. And regardless of how youthful your face appears, your soul possesses the authority of someone who has traversed hell and emerged triumphant. Number 7. They mistook soft features for a weak resolve. They observed your delicate features and made the perilous assumption that they lacked underlying strength. To them, gentleness equated to vulnerability. Kindness equated to inexperience. And because you didn't exude aggression or boisterousness, they presumed you were incapable of defending yourself. However, they were oblivious to the fact that your resilience was forged from some of the most challenging experiences a person can endure. You didn't simply awaken with inner fortitude. You were compelled to cultivate it. They were unaware of the numerous instances you were betrayed and had to continue functioning as if nothing had occurred. They didn't witness the nights you wept yourself to sleep, but still arose the next morning and fulfilled your obligations. They didn't witness the repeated attempts to crush your spirit, and instead of succumbing, you grew stronger in silence. Every smile you display has been tested. Every boundary you establish originated from being pushed beyond your limits repeatedly. You didn't become resilient through shouting. You became resilient by refusing to yield when the world urged you to surrender. Your strength is concealed within your restraint. You don't engage in every battle. You don't pursue every insult. You don't retaliate every time someone disrespects you, and that's why they assumed you lacked resolve, because you didn't react as they anticipated. However, the truth is that your restraint is a source of power. It required immense effort to prevent this world from hardening you. It took extraordinary strength to resist mirroring the animosity directed at you. That's not weakness, that's mastery. They believed you would falter, bend, or be easily controlled. But now they are realizing you are composed of something they cannot manipulate: determination. You are not loud, but you are immovable. You are not malicious, but you are resolute when it comes to your values. They cannot comprehend how someone so calm, so agreeable, can be so unyielding when provoked. That's because your strength wasn't cultivated in comfort. It was forged in the crucible. And now the very individuals who sought to overpower you are the ones attempting to decipher how you maintain your composure without ever resorting to aggression. Number 8. They came to dominate but ended up exposed. They arrived believing they held the upper hand. They were convinced they were more intelligent, more experienced, more in control. They came armed with strategies, manipulation, and psychological games. They were prepared to dominate, to twist your words, to ensnare you in a web of confusion where they would invariably wield the power. However, the instant they entered your sphere, something shifted. What they failed to anticipate was your energy. It didn't engage in conflict. It didn't pursue. It didn't participate in their games. It simply revealed the longer they lingered near you, the more their mask began to slip. Without you uttering a single word, their insecurities surfaced, their guilt intensified, their shame magnified, their lies unraveled. You didn't have to expose them. Your presence sufficed. They believed you were someone they could mold and control, but you were a mirror, and mirrors don't deceive. That's what unnerved them. They expected you to be bewildered. Instead, they found themselves unraveling in your silence. You didn't attack. You observed. You allowed them to speak. You allowed them to reveal their true nature. And what they didn't foresee was how uncomfortable that would become, because your energy was pure while theirs was tainted. Your spirit was grounded while theirs was fragmented. They entered with pride and a desire for control, but by the time they realized what was transpiring, they were confronting all the aspects of themselves they sought to conceal. You appeared to be an easy target, someone they could deceive, exploit, or emotionally corner, but you ultimately served as the catalyst that exposed the depth of their own brokenness and the shallowness of their tactics. And now they are loath to approach you, not because you harmed them, but because they cannot conceal themselves from their own reflection when they are in your presence. That's what renders you formidable. You don't have to fight for truth. You embody it. You don't have to denounce darkness. It reveals itself in your presence. You were never the one being tested. They were, and the result was that you remained grounded while they disintegrated. You were not their prey. You were their lesson. Number 9, You looked like a toy, but moved like a tool of God. They approached you as if you were a plaything, something to toy with, test, control, or amuse themselves with. They saw your light and assumed it signified softness. They saw your composure and assumed it indicated cluelessness. In their estimation, you were a puzzle to be solved, a game to be won, an individual to be managed. However, what they encountered was not weak. What they mishandled was not ordinary. It was anointed, protected, set apart, and that error cost them dearly. They didn't realize it initially because you don't exude arrogance. You don't flaunt your power. You allow individuals to make assumptions. You grant them the space to reveal themselves, and that's precisely what they did. They revealed their motives. They exposed their arrogance. They displayed their true intentions. While they were attempting to decipher you, they inadvertently stepped into a spiritual trap they had constructed for you only to trigger it themselves. You operated differently. You responded with grace when they expected rage. You remained silent when they sought to provoke drama. You disengaged when they attempted to lure you into chaos. They were searching for emotional vulnerability, but all they encountered was divine restraint. That was their initial indication that you were not who they assumed. They believed they were dealing with someone easily manipulated, but they ended up confronting a vessel that had been refined by God. That's the aspect that now terrifies them, not merely that their attempts to exploit you failed, but that their actions revealed their true character. Others noticed. You didn't have to expose them. Their own actions divulged the truth. Their credibility waned. People began to question their integrity. Things began to unravel. And all of this transpired not because you retaliated, but because God safeguards what He anoints. You were never the toy. You were the test. You were sent to expose hearts, to shake hidden motives, and to reveal the truth. And now that the dust has settled, they are realizing they were never in control. They believed they were playing a game, but they were standing on sacred ground, and now they are grappling with the consequences of mistaking God's vessel for something disposable. Number 10. Your grace disarmed them, but your wisdom dismantled them. Initially, they were captivated by your grace, your demeanor, the gentleness of your tone. It all seemed safe, inviting, and disarming. You didn't arrive with arrogance. You didn't seek to impress anyone. You didn't vie for attention, and that's precisely what drew them in. They believed they had encountered someone gentle enough to influence, malleable enough to control. They were so fixated on your outward beauty that they neglected to prepare for your depth. They remained close, believing they held the upper hand. You weren't confrontational. You didn't raise your voice. You provided space for others to express themselves. That put them at ease, perhaps too at ease, and just when they felt they could predict your every move, you opened your mouth and began to speak, not casually, not for show, but with divine precision, with wisdom not derived from books, gossip, or fleeting trends, but from God, from lived experiences, from scars that had been healed, not concealed. The moment you spoke truth, something within them fractured. They heard something they were unprepared to hear, not because it was unkind, but because it was undeniably clear. You weren't attempting to prove anything, yet your words carried weight. So to wrap things up, remember that your youthful glow, that radiant spirit, isn't a sign of naivety. It's a testament to your inner strength, a reflection of battles fought and wisdom earned. Don't let anyone underestimate the power and depth you hold within. You are a warrior, a wise soul, divinely protected and preserved. Embrace your journey, trust your intuition, and never dim your light for anyone who tries to diminish you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced being underestimated because of your youthful appearance? What resonated most with you in this message? Share your thoughts, ask a question, or just join the conversation in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this and want to hear more empowering messages like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on future content designed to help you own your power and shine your light. Thanks for being here, for being here, for being here, for being here, for being